It is not every time that you come across movies that go into the origins of certain business brands. So when Ford vs Ferrari came out in November of 2019, I made it a point that I was going to see it. And in December 2019, I saw it. And between then and now, I've seen it about 3 times. Each time that I see Ford vs Ferrari, it leaves me with an interesting lesson that can help me in my journey of doing and running businesses. And I'm about to share with you one of them right about now.
You're not on fire. Fill the tank. Fill the tank.
Hi and welcome to my channel. I am Dayo Samuel. This is where I help you make more money with less stress, less fear, and less anxiety. And if that looks like something you're looking for, particularly if you're in search of mental and emotional wellness as an entrepreneur, go ahead and subscribe and you'll be on your way. And remember to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the conversations we are having here. The first time I saw Ford vs Ferrari, one of the key lessons I learned happened in about 24 minutes into the movie. That was when Lee Iacocca was presented to the management of Ford that they should head in new directions. Of course, before then, they had been doing business in a particular direction. They've been focusing on certain types of products in the marketplace. And at that point, Lee Iacocca wanted them to explore new territories. And the board, and of course, Henry Ford too, was actually not open to that. Now, in order to get him to change and to change his perspective, Lee Iacocca, who was a salesperson at that point, who was making a presentation, did something very interesting. He actually spoke to the pain point of Ford as a company.
Lee, in the last 3 years, you and your marketing team have presided over the worst sales slump in U.S. history. Why exactly should Mr. Ford listen to you?
Because we've been thinking wrong. Ferrari. Now they've won 4 out of the last 5 Le Mans. We need to think like Ferrari.
Ferrari makes fewer cars in a year than we make in a day. We spend more on toilet paper than they do on their entire output. You want us to think like them.
Enzo Ferrari will go down in history as the greatest car manufacturer of all time. Why? Is it because he built the most cars? No, it's because of what his cars mean. Victory. Ferrari wins at Le Mans. People, they want some of that victory. What if the Ford badge meant victory?
And that taught me a particular lesson when it comes to making sales and making presentation, particularly about persuasion. Sometimes in order to get people to understand what you're trying to say, you have to get to speak to their pain points in order for them to truly understand what you're trying to say. If you are going to sell something to somebody, ensure you look for a leverage, something that triggers them to make sure they pay attention to what you want to tell them, to what you want to sell to them. If you don't do that, they are just going to see it as something that just comes their way, and then, of course, they'll move on. So for me, lesson number 2 has to do with friendship and collaboration. In Ford vs Ferrari, you see the power of collaboration and friendship playing out, especially as with the case of Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles. Even though Miles is British and Shelby is American, the two of them could forge a bond of friendship that could also translate into business. So when Ford needed somebody to actually handle their new product, it was easier for Shelby to recommend Miles, even though they were against Miles.
Now you let Ken Miles race Daytona. If he wins, he gets to drive Le Mans.
And if he doesn't?
Ford Motor Company gets full ownership of Shelby America.
Sometimes you need to forge partnerships, you need to forge relationships and collaborations with people such that even though outrightly they may not bring anything your way, eventually something may come up and you'll be the only person that can actually do that for them. In line with that, third lesson seems to connect with what I've just shared with you now, and that has to do with having talent and not knowing business. Ken Miles had the talent. He was usually winning races. But Shelby had business. Even though Shelby had been a racer before, he had become more business savvy than Miles.
Without sponsors, you get no car, Ken. And last I checked, the professionals all have a car. You cannot.
And that was an advantage that I saw there, that, okay, Ken had the talent, but Shelby had the business sense. And that brings to mind that sometimes having talent does not mean that you are doing business. Sometimes you could basically just be trading your talent in exchange for money and not be building a business. Shelby was able to build a business, even though he had been a razor before. He was able to translate that into something else and build a business out of that. But Miles was just a talented guy who could raise very well, but he didn't build a business out of it. It was more like somebody who was being hired to be used to meet the end goal of some other people. Learn to turn your talent into a business. You may have peculiar skills, you may have unique skills. Learn to turn it into a business. Don't let it end up with you having just talent. Make it into a business. Now, number 4, sometimes organizations are after personal agendas. This clearly played out in Ford versus Ferrari, in the sense that Henry Ford too had a personal beef, Ferrari himself. And at first I didn't understand this. It took me about the 3rd time of seeing the movie before I could understand that there was a personal beef between the owner of Ferrari and the owner of Ford.
What exactly did he say about me?
He called you fat, sir. Pig-headed.
Go on.
He said you're not Henry Ford. You're Henry Ford II.
Are you running your business because you want to prove something to someone? Are you running business because you want to be the first to do something? A dynamic that played out in Ford versus Ferrari is the concept of big brand versus small brand. And you find this play out specifically with Carroll Shelby. Now, Carroll Shelby had built a personal brand as somebody that the management could trust, but he had also learned to build a provider brand, what I call a provider brand, which is the brand that you create when you're trying to create a company that provides certain goods or certain services. So that's what I call provider branding. And I've perhaps talked about that, so you can find that up here in the card above my head here. So you can actually watch a video about the different brands that you can create. Now, what happened was that Carroll Shelby had gotten to that point where his personal brand had now become a provider brand, and so he was able to merge the two of them together while still running business. So you find that anytime they want to engage Shelby, he will use his business brand, his provider brand, to get into that engagement. But sometimes when he needs to have certain negotiations, he goes there as his personal brand. This is a dynamic that played out in that movie that I saw in different places. Sometimes your personal brand, the collateral that you've built with your personal brand, could create a leverage for your business brand, for your provider brand. And to tie that into the next lesson, you'll find that Carroll Shelby isn't what people call the specialist. Actually, in real life, you find that Carroll Shelby was a fight instructor, or so I think he was a fight instructor before he became a farmer, and then he became a racer, and then he became a builder of cars. Now, what you find in that, which is very interesting to someone like me, is that sometimes the people who succeed far and wide in businesses are not what we refer to as specialists. They are people who are referred to as multi-specialists. So rather than being mono-specialists who specialize in just one thing and build their entire lives around one thing, what you find there is that Carroll Shelby is a multi-specialist. Anything he finds himself in, he gives himself to, he eats, and then ensures he succeeds excellently and gets to the top of his game. So when he was a farmer, he was at the top of his game. When he was a racer, he was at the top of his game. In fact, it was the fact that he was a racer that the movie started with, because the movie started with showing us that he was racing, and then the doctor told him that he can't race anymore. In order not to become irrelevant in the scheme of things, he transited from being a racer to building the cars that people will need to race with. And origin story also tells us that Carroll Shelby is an avid entrepreneur. He moved from one career to another career to another career. By career, I'm referring to business. Hope you understand. So he moved from one business to another business to another business to another business, and he succeeded in all of them. And that kind of breaks the frame of what people used to say about people succeeding in businesses. Usually we are told that you should pick one thing and focus and build your entire life around it. But you find that Carroll Shelby didn't build his life building cars. He started from somewhere, then transited and transited and transited before he arrived at building cars. I wanted to understand today that you don't have to box yourself by the expectations of society that you have to do one thing for the rest of your life. If you get tired with one thing, you can move on to the next thing. But as I usually recommend to the people I work with, I tell them build systems so that these things can run irrespective of your presence. These are the lessons that I personally learned from Ford vs Ferrari. Now I want to hear from you. Have you seen Ford vs Ferrari? What lessons did you learn from that movie? Please share in the comments below. And if this is your first time of coming over to my channel, I am Dayo Samuel once again. And on this channel, my goal is to help you make more money with less stress, less fear, and less anxiety. And the goal is to lead you in the journey in search of mental and emotional wellness as an entrepreneur. Now, if that sounds like something you're looking for, please go ahead and subscribe and we'll keep the conversation going on. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.